Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll try to go through this verse, as it's a very wonderful verse. So Api adyasnas tuam swakrite te prabho jihase swat surdo anujivana yesham na chanyad bhavata padam bhuja parayanam rajashyo jittam ahamsam api adyana tuam swakrito tata itha prabhu jihase swat surdo anujivana Yeshamna Chanyad Bhavata Padam Bhuja Prayanam Rajashu Yojitahamsam Api Adhyanastvam Swakriti Prabhu Jihasa Surdo Anujivana Yeshamna Chanyad Bhavata Padam Bhuja Prayanam Rajashu Yojitam Hamsam. I have not sang it nicely, but those, I know a lot of the devotees here are very capable. If anyone would like to sing it, you can do so, or chant it, I'm sorry.
Apyadyanastam swakritihita prabho jihasasi svithridornujivanaha yesham nachanyad bhavata padam bhujat parayanam rajasu yojitam hasam.
Thank you, Narada Prabhu. Anyone else would like to take on? Vanet?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Prabhuji.
No, please. Take on.
Abhyatyanastuam svakrahilkita prabho jihasasi svit sukreta nujitvanaha yesham na chanyat bhavataha padam bhujat parayanam rajasu yojitam hasam. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Okay, one last call. Okay, we'll do the word by word translation. Api, if, adya, today, naha, us, tvam, you, swakrita, self-executed, ihita, all duties, Prabhu, O my Lord, jihasasi, giving up, swith, possible, surada, intimate friends, anujivina, living at the mercy of. Yesham, of whom, na, nor, cha, and anyat, anyone else, bhavata, your, pada ambhujat, from the lotus feet, parayanam, dependent, rajasu, unto the kings, yojita, engaged in, hamsam, enmity. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O my Lord, you have kindly executed all duties yourself. After leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us. Now when all kings are at enmity with us. So, O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. After leaving us today, though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all the kings are at enmity with us, O my Lord, you've executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and no one else to protect us, now when all the kings are at enmity with us. So the connection is, are you leaving us today, now when all kings are at enmity with us? And then there's the the words that come in between. So, purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. The Pandavas are most fortunate because with all good luck, they're entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost sign of misfortune. But in our case of our transcendental relationship with the Lord, it is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. The material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. But the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. The whole material world is moving on in this false attempt to become independent of the laws of nature. Beginning from Ravana, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age, they're trying to overcome the laws of nature. They're trying now to approach distant planetary systems by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on Him. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor. The Pandavas are the ideal executors of this standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they were completely dependent on the goodwill of Sri Krishna. But they were not idle parasites of the Lord. They were all highly qualified, both by personal character and by physical activities. The perfection life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. Those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anatha, or without any garden, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanatha, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be sanatha so that we can always be protected from the unfavorable condition of material existence. By the deluding power of the external material energy, we forget that the material condition of life is a most undesirable perplexity. The Bhagavad Gita therefore directs us, 7.19. This is the verse we covered last week. That after Anam Janmamante Yanavan Prapratante Vasudevam Sarvamati Samahatma Sudurlabha. That after many, many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudeva is all in all, and that the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto Him completely. That is the sign of a Mahatma. All the members of the Pandav family were Mahatmas in household life. Notice he says in household life, meaning Mahatmas aren't just sannyasis or brahmacharis, in household life. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the head of these Mahatmas, and Kunti Devi was the mother. The lessons of Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavad Purana, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, separation from the Lord was just like the separation of fish from water. Srimati Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like a thunderbolt, and the whole prayer of the queen is to try to persuade the Lord to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there to deal with the Pandavas. It is not only the Pandavas who are put into a condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition. And the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord and thereby overcome all difficulties of material existence. So, very amazing, verse. We can see, how Lord Krishna is, reciprocating so nicely with the mood of Kunti Devi and how she's, doing likewise. Dear devotees, those of you that just joined, we're reading this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, verse 8, chapter 37. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us? Now, when all the kings are at enmity with us? So, the portions of the purport that I found very wonderful was where some particular sections, I'll go over this, then I'll go over the extended lecture by Srila Prabhupada, the teachings of Queen Kunti, and then kind of move on as time permits. This is a very advanced and wonderful topic, so I don't have the potency to speak about this, but I'll do my best. So it says here, the Pandavas were most fortunate because with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining to us what true fortune is. Now, true fortune is not all the things that are desired, in this world. The true fortune is to be dependent on mercy of Bhagavan, Lord Shri Krishna. The whole world, goes around the idea of having different types of fortune, but true fortune and good luck is to be dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of the Lord or someone else is utmost sign of misfortune. But in the case of our transcendental relationship with Lord, it is our most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. So why is it misfortune to be dependent on others? Why is that considered the case in the material world? And it's a misfortune because we may have the mindset that we're not really confident that somebody is truly desiring our benefit or not. And secondly, we're not capable of having a level of trust that they really are truly helping us. Srila Prabhupada taught a very fundamental principle. My spiritual master was mentioning that when he was talking about the old days in New York City. He was saying Srila Prabhupada taught the principle of love and trust, and in material world, that's translated into give and take. That Lord Krishna taught us love and trust, which results in give and take. And we can see that in our life. If we really love somebody and we trust them, we're a lot more forgiving of apparent mistakes or errors that may have occurred. They give me a glass of water instead of a glass of milk, that kind of thing. So then Srila Prabhupada says, material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. And the disease is because we want to have that controlling power. And Srila Prabhupada is pointing that desire to be the controller is actually a disease. That's called ahankara, false ego. Then Srila Prabhupada goes on to say, but the material world does not allow us to become independent. Does not allow us. And he says, the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. I was once reading an article in New York Times, maybe over 5 years ago, and the article was written by a philosopher, and he said, we always talk about Mother Nature, but the point he was making is he said, Mother Nature is not so motherly all the time. And we see that, where we've got coronavirus going, wildfires, etc., the age of uncertainty. So why is material nature not allowing us? Because she's a divine energy. Daivihi asagunamaya mama maya dharateya mahamyoya papadyante mayam etam dharatite. Daivi, divine, not like material, but divine energy of the Lord. And because it's the energy of the Lord Himself controls it. So, why does Srila Prabhupada say cruel material nature? What's so cruel about her? Because she doesn't allow everything in the universe to follow our commands and our desires. And why is that? Why does she not allow it? Why is she not like a wish-fulfilling tree? Whatever we ask, we get. Because she's merciful. She's Daivi. We oftentimes talk about the negative aspect of Maya. Maya meaning that which is not Krishna. But there is a positive aspect, and that it shows, Maya is trying to show us where our real benefit lies. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. So why is it false? Because to become independent of the laws of nature is considered material advancement. We're thinking that we're going to advance based on the strength of our purpose and our ability. But it's false because we're not the only controllers. Krishna mentions that in chapter 5, where he says there are 3 doers. One is the jiva, the soul. Second is the actual, chapter 5 Bhagavad. One is the jiva, the soul. Second is material nature, prakriti. And third is the Paramatma, the Lord as the sanctioning authority. So to think that everything's under our control is just not the case. The whole material world is moving on this false attempt to become independent of the laws of nature. And we see that, all the attempt to do various sorts of personal endeavors or experimentation, because a lot of the analytical personalities, which can include teachers, scholars, philosophers, scientists, they feel that spirituality is totally based on faith. But if you actually look at it, Chaitanya Prabhuji was saying this in one lecture, if you look at it, there's faith in scientific processes as well. The faith is that, number one, that all the laws that we're finding here are true everywhere in the universe. And if you think about it, that's a huge leap of faith, because we who so value experimentation and our ability to see, feel, touch, taste, smell, what do we know about a universe that's billions of light years away from here? Is that not a leap of faith to assume that the laws that we're finding here are applicable universally when we haven't even been beyond this planet? That's pretty presumptuous. And then the second element of faith, Prabhuji was saying, is the element of thinking that we have the ability to determine these universal laws. Who says that we will be able to determine all these universal laws? There's no, rule, a universal law that says that thou shalt, therefore be able to figure out all the rules of the universe. I'll skip over the Ravana pastime. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become dependent on Him. That's the goal. And it's the highest. And we'll talk about that once we finish the purport. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor, but at the same time, depend completely on the Lord. So, what is valor? According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, valor is strength of mind or strength of spirit that allows us to encounter difficult or dangerous situations and proceed with determination and bravery. But Srila Prabhupada is saying, work with valor, but at the same time, depend on the Lord. This is like, work as if everything depends upon me, but pray as with understanding that everything actually is the mercy of Lord Sri Krishna. And then Srila Prabhupada talks about the Pandavas, how they were ideal. And then he says something very strong, that they were completely dependent on the goodwill of the Lord Sri Krishna, but they were not idle parasites of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada once, I heard a lecture, and I think it was around 2001 of Srila Prabhupada, where he said, there are so many people in the universe, and Lord Krishna is not looking for millions of lazy, good for nothing, do nothing sort of folks. Lord Krishna, he said, is looking for that one Arjun. Of course, Lord Krishna is there for the benefit of everyone. But Srila Prabhupada is making the point that Arjuna was endeavoring fully, not half-heartedly. So that's why he's not a parasite. Meaning, parasite means, parasite is an organism that comes into a living being's body, and then it sucks the energy and the life out of a human being. So that's a pretty negative sort of individual. So Prabhupada says they were all highly qualified by personal character and by physical activities. Still, they always looked for the mercy of the Lord because they knew every living being is dependent by constitutional position. So when he says qualified by both personal character and by physical activities, means we need character. A devotee should have character. Character means to embody the qualities of a Vaishnava. Most important of which is faith in the Lord and being compassionate. Because after all, these qualities manifest, this character comes from actually engaging in devotional service. It's not by independent effort. And physical activity. So physical activity is seva. By seva is how we realize our instructions. Still, they looked for the mercy of the Lord because they knew that every living being is dependent by constitutional position. So, what does it mean to look for the mercy of the Lord? And we'll explore that in depth, hopefully. It means to have the genuine humility, making great effort, understanding we are only an instrument in the hands of the Lord, but feeling truly needy of His blessings. The perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. Those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anatha, without any guardian, whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called Sanatana, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be Sanatana so that we can always be protected from unfavorable condition of material existence. By the deluding power of external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is most undesirable perplexity. This is like Arjun's example in the beginning of chapter 2. Bhagavad Gita directs us, after many, many births, one fortunate becomes aware of the fact that Vasudeva is all in all, and that the best way of leading life is to surrender unto him completely. This is the Bhavanam Janma Mante Yanavanam Prapadyante verse. And here, Srila Prabhupada starts talking about Kunti Mahani. Separation from the Lord was just like separation of a fish from water. We have all seen when fish come out of water, they struggle mightily because they can't breathe. They're in a foreign place. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his book Teachings of Lord, life and precepts of Lord Sri Chaitanya, the book that he sent out on Srila Prabhupada's birth anniversary, which was found in McGill University. He says in there, we should always understand that we are a foreigner in a foreign land. We're a foreigner in a foreign land. He's not referring to being Indian or whatever and being sitting here in Northwest Oregon. He's talking about, the foreign land is our body in the material world, and we're foreign. We don't belong there. We're like the fish out of water. So Kunti Maharani felt such separation because of the dependence she had. Like a thunderbolt, the whole prayer of Kunti Maharani is to persuade the Lord to stay with them. So everything, the entire Queen Kunti prayer is this. It's this. After all, it is not only the Pandavas who are put into condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition. And the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord. So it's not just, Queen Kunti is not just speaking for the Pandavas, she's also speaking for us. So I know I took a lot of time on this purport, but it has some very foundational instructions and observations of our nature. If you want to read more, like devotees were saying, you can go into the teachings of Queen Kunti. And this verse is referenced in chapter 20, which is entitled Full Surrender. Atmanivedana. Full surrender. So that tells you, if Srila Prabhupada put that as the header for this chapter, that tells you how amazing this one prayer by Kunti Devi, where she's saying, are you leaving us today, now when all the kings are at enmity with us? You've executed all duties by yourself, meaning you don't really need to leave to Dwarka, because by your will, you can execute all duties everywhere. So why are you leaving us today? So Srila Prabhupada says in here, so you'll notice that the first section, the first paragraph, is completely the purport that we just went over. And then he expands this. And this is similar to lectures he gave in 1973. So after the battle of Kurukshetra ended and the Pandavas were established in their kingdom, Krishna, before going home to Dwarka, was taking leave of his aunt and bidding her farewell. So Srila Prabhupada is setting the scene of Queen Kunti's prayers. Setting the scene. It was at that time that Kunti offered this prayer. Now she directly asks, is it a fact that after finishing your duty, you're going away and leaving us alone? This is the devotee's position. We have no means of protection other than your lotus feet. This is full surrender. This is Atmanivedana. This should be the position. I'll go over the section I just skipped by going to Chaitanya Charitamrita in a second. We should know that we're actually in danger in this material world. Maya, illusion, may catch us at any time. As soon as we're little inattentive, thinking, now I've done my duty, let me take a little rest. No, there's no rest. We must always be alert. So one thing Srila Prabhupada taught was, in Krishna consciousness, there's no such thing as hovering in a steady state, stable condition. It doesn't work that way. If one doesn't continually try to progress in pure devotion service, then one will unfortunately go back in the other direction. The helicopter will not hover. It will either go forward or it'll come down. So Let me see, there's a section. The symptoms of a really Krishna conscious person are: he knows that Krishna is the supreme master, he always thinks of himself in danger without Krishna, and by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, he feels safe. And then he quotes this famous verse from Bhagavatam, Manmana bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam vivasasi yukta evam. So this gets repeated again later in 18.65. You may declare to the world that my devotees never vanquished. Never vanquished. If one becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, there is no question of danger. Of course, Krishna gives protection to everyone, for without his protection, no one can live even for a single moment. How do we know this? Simple. How is the soul alive in this body? By the sanctioning of the Paramatma that's residing within the body. If the Paramatma left, the soul would not be residing in this body. That's what the Vaishnavacharyas say, that is proof of the potency of Krishna's presence and how he's giving us life. Because if Paramatma leaves, there's no life inside that body. Not just the Atma, but the Paramatma. And he goes on to say, Krishna always sees to the comforts of his devotees, and the devotees are always busy. I really like this section. Krishna is seeing to the comfort of his devotees, and devotees are always busy seeing that Krishna is satisfied. The devotees dress Krishna, supply him with food, always engage in service. Similarly, Krishna always sees to the happiness of his devotee. This is the intimate relationship between the devotee and Krishna. Notice, intimate relationship between devotee and Krishna. And we know how Atma and Paramatma are very intimately situated. Every living being has a relationship with Krishna, but when one becomes a devotee, the relationship becomes intimate. Relationship becomes intimate, not just a formality, but intimate relationship. Without Krishna consciousness, one thinks, I shall protect myself, or my society, community, or state will give me protection. I have so many protectors. Why should I care for God? Why should I go to Krishna? But the fact is that unless Krishna gives protection, one cannot be protected. This is in Bhagavatam. And these are the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. Balasya neha sharanam pitaru nirsimha. When Prahlad Maharaj offered prayers to King as Nrsingadev, my dear Lord, one should not think that because a child has a father and mother, he has full protection. If Krishna did not protect a child, the child could not be protected, even if he were to have thousands of fathers and mothers. Prahlad also said, Natasya Jagadam Mati Machta now. It's not that a good physician, a good medicine can protect one from disease. Like I see this in my practice. The intent is always, hopefully, good and sincere to do well, to somehow extend Lord Krishna's mercy to everybody that we encounter. Sometimes, without Krishna's sanction, that may not transpire. That may not, come up so easily. Similarly, Prahlad continues, one may have a good boat, but this does not guarantee that he will not drown in the ocean. If you do not protect him, he may drown at any moment. Kunti Devi knows this, and therefore, although she's the mother of great warriors, Arjuna and Bhima, they're not quote-unquote parasites, as the first paragraph talked about. She still thinks, although my sons are great warriors, they're not sufficient to give us protection. Nothing can give us protection but your lotus feet. This verse illustrates the position of a surrendered soul seeking the protection of Krishna. If we remain in this position, knowing that our only protector is Krishna, and that our only duty is to serve Krishna, then our life is successful. I hope all of you dear devotees are not minding that we're reading the actual, this purport verse, etc. I know it's taking time rather than just simply speaking, but Srila Prabhupada's pouring in some pretty profound realizations in this section. So he called this chapter Full Surrender. So some of you really love this, I've heard, love this verse. Also found in Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22.100. Narottam Vilas Prabhu, is the screen visible?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can see the screen.
Chaitanya Madhya Leela 22.100. Anukul yasya sankalpa pratikul yasya vrajanam rakshashyati iti vishvaso goptripti varanam tata atma nikshepa karpanye sadvida sharanagati. Sadvida sharanagati. The 6 divisions of surrender are the acceptance of those things that are favorable to devotional service, the rejection of unfavorable, the conviction that Krishna will give protection, the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian or master, full self-surrender and humility. And Srila Prabhupada enumerates what the 6 items are. So the first thing is Anukul Yasya Sankalpa. So Anukul Yasya, we go back here. It says of anything that assists devotional service to the Lord. Sankalpa. Sankalpa is taking a vow. I take a vow to accept this. Everything that is favorable for the rendering of devotional service to the Lord is accepted by the devotee. Pratikul yasya vrajnam. Pratikul yasya, of anything that hinders devotional service, vrajnam, complete rejection. Not just I won't do it, it's like I reject it, I toss it aside like trash. So the idea here is to reject everything unfavorable to the Lord's service. It's called renunciation. That's what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport. That is renunciation. Rakshashyati iti vishvasho. Rakshashyati, he will protect, iti, thus, vishvasha, strong conviction. So Prabhupada says, devotee must be firmly convinced that Krishna will give him protection. We'll go into this in depth in the remainder. No one else can actually give one protection, and being firmly convinced of this is called faith. Shraddhavan Janahe. This kind of faith is different from the faith of impersonalists who wants to merge. A devotee wants to remain always in Lord's service. In this way, the Lord is merciful and gives full protection from dangers found in path of devotion. The next section is Goptripte Paranam Tata. Tripte Paranam Tata. So Goptripte being like a guardian, like father or some superior personality. Varanam, acceptance. So the idea is we should accept Krishna as our maintainer and master, only depending upon him, considering himself the only protector. So the devotee has to be convinced that there's no other protector. Atma Nikshepa Karpanye. So here, Atma Nikshepa means full self-surrender. Karpanya means humility. Self-surrender means remembering that one's activities and desires are not independent. The devotee is completely dependent on Krishna. He acts and thinks as Krishna desires. So you see how that, just that very kind of very short verse captures everything that Srila Prabhupada talked about here: maintenance, dependence, protection, and activity, seva. So, yeah, and Srila Prabhupada ends that by saying the devotee is always meek and humble. So we know from Bhagavad Gita 9.21, Ananyas Chintayantam Mam Ye Janaha Paripashate Tesham Nitya Bhuktanam. That verse is saying that those who worship Krishna with exclusivity, meaning complete dependence, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So the question here is, what is Krishna carrying and what is he preserving? That's the essential question. What is Krishna protecting? Ultimately, Krishna is protecting our relationship with him. That's the ultimate protection. You know, like in chapter 3, the verse which indicates that a little advancement on this path protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. So what's that protection? The protection is our connection with Krishna, that in our next life we don't forget Krishna. It is true that Krishna is providing and preserving whatever is, favorable for nurturing that relationship or that connection. That is true. So Krishna may protect the physical body of a devotee and their family members and their possessions and their activities. Because if those are instruments by which we serve Krishna and cultivate our loving devotion to him, then the Lord is preserving and providing whatever the devotee needs to progress in devotional service without disturbance. And likewise, or in contrary manner, if something, a situation or some material object becomes a hindrance or barrier to a devotee who is actually very sincere, then Krishna may take it away. So the key here is someone who's very sincere, Krishna may take away that thing that we have the greatest attachment. Prabhupada Maharaj was one time saying in a lecture that in New York Temple, the temple president had a mode of operation that was kind of unusual, in that anybody who would come there, be it somebody, just some new kid off the block, in the beginning, they could pretty much, hang on to everything. And at that time, you basically had one small locker, everything going into one little locker. And then that president would see, okay, what is it that this person has the greatest attachment to? And somehow encourage that person to give it up. Now, of course, Srila Prabhupada, when he saw such attachment, he didn't ask them to give it up. He said, actually use that attachment for the service of Krishna. But that's just an example. So the idea is, Krishna may take away something that's hindering our spiritual progress, but that's actually a very special protection, and that's only given to those that are very sincere to progress. So ultimately, Krishna is protecting our relationship with him. That's the protection. And that's the focus of full surrender. Because Krishna orchestrates our lives as devotees in such a way that we inevitably become more and more dependent. We wind up having our false shelters being basically taken away. You all know that. We all know that. So he orchestrates, he coordinates our lives so that we become dependent upon him and attached to him. Now, somebody who's advanced devotee, they learn to understand how every situation is actually Lord Krishna's loving protection for us. A very famous example is how the Lord protected Gajendra, Gajendra Moksha, the king of the elephants, from a deathly struggle with a crocodile. So he did that. And we can see last week His Grace Chaitanya Prabhuji talked about Sudama, how he blessed one who was poverty-stricken with tremendous, fabulous opulence. So not only yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva pachamimam mama vartma anuvartante manushyan partha service. Not only reciprocal, but what is called proportionally reciprocal. I like to call it altruism. Krishna does way above and beyond what we offer him. So a devotee who's advanced sees every situation as Krishna's loving protection. Now, Gajendra and Sudama are examples of Krishna's loving protection. Now let's talk about just Parikshit Maharaj. The Lord had arranged him to be cursed to die in 7 days. Even though he was the king of the universe and in his relative, virile manhood, he was very strong and in the prime of his life. Now, the same person, Parikshit Maharaj, who could not tolerate being in a forest and not having some water to drink, and as a result, draped a snake over a sadhu's neck. That same person, how is it that same person who could not tolerate being without water for a couple of hours, he sat without water for 7 days? So it's actually Krishna's protection. Krishna didn't provide him with the water in the forest, but he provided him the water of the Bhagavatam. So in either case, whether one's in the situation of Gajendra or Sudama, or in the situation of Parikshit, Krishna's protecting his devotees, albeit in different manners. And if you look at those pastimes, in each case, devotee accepts that. Parikshit Maharaj accepts it. He says, I accept whatever the result of that curse is. Let whatever happened there happen, but let me have attachment to your lotus feet no matter what. So Krishna is a well-wisher of everyone. He knows exactly what is ultimately good for each of us, and he provides us that. But it's not that Krishna is hard-hearted or stone-hearted, that he doesn't try to help with the physical maintenance of his devotees. He does. And we shouldn't negate, be negative about the, oh, Prabhu, you're in Maya, you believe you're the body. No, Srila Prabhupada never taught that. But learn to see the body as Krishna's property so that we can serve him very nicely. So here's a very nice prayer section. So this is from Dhruva Maharaj, pastime, where we kind of see this ideas kind of expand. So, Dhruva Maharaj said after the Lord touched him with a conch shell, listen, verse 7, I'm not displaying that. Verse 6, he said, my dear Lord, you're all powerful. After entering upon me, after entering in me, you've enlivened all my senses, especially my power of speech, because think of it, Dhruva is a little child, Prahlad is a little child, hardly expressing such amazing poems and prayers, because Krishna is entering within them through the mercy of Narad Muni in both circumstances, and through their determined effort to engage in devotional service. So he says, my dear Lord, you're all powerful. And after enlivening me by entering within me, especially my power of speech, let me offer my obeisance to you. So he says, my Lord, O Supreme Lord, you are the supreme personality form of all benediction. Therefore, for one who abides in your devotional service with no other desire, worshipping your lotus feet is better than becoming king and lording it over a kingdom. That is the benediction of worshipping your lotus feet. To ignorant devotees like me, you're causelessly merciful maintainer. Just like a cow who takes care of the newly born calf by supplying milk and giving it protection from attack. one who abides in your devotional service with no other desire, worshiping your feet. That is the benediction. So Srila Prabhupada's purport here is very wonderful. Dhruva Maharaj was cognizant of the defective nature of his own devotional service. So a devotee is always aware of where they're coming from. Pure devotional service is without form, is not covered by mental speculation or fruitive activities. Pure devotional service is therefore called ahitaki, unmotivated. Hetu is motivated and ahitaki is unmotivated. Dhruva Maharaj knew that he had come to worship the Lord in devotional service with a motive to get the kingdom of his father. Such an adulterated devotee can never see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. So Dhruva Maharaj knew his weakness. Most devotees know where that pinprick in their heart lies. We know that. We don't necessarily always need somebody to point that out. He therefore felt very grateful for the causeless mercy of the Lord. The Lord is so merciful that he not only fulfills the desires of a devotee who is driven by ignorance and desires for material benefit, but he also gives such a devotee all protection, just like a cow gives milk to a newborn calf. But what's the requirement? A devotee must be very sincere in his devotional service. Then, although there may be things wrong on the devotee's part, Krishna will guide him, gradually elevate him. So what Krishna supplies is protection, maintenance, elevation. What we supply is our attitude, our desire to somehow there do something meaningful. Very beautiful, right? Very beautiful purport. Prayers for material benediction are intended for satisfying senses, and when one is fully such frustrated and cannot fulfill the senses, then he desires liberation and freedom from existence. But the actual ultimate goal is to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Panchama Purusha Artha. Then he says, Lord Chaitanya taught us not to ask from the Supreme any benediction for such material wealth. Dhruva Maharaj, being aware of such a desire, wanted protection from the Lord, so he might not be misled or deviate from the path of devotional service. Do you see what his protection request is? The prayer that's being referred to is this one in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila 20.29. Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatat bhakti ahoiti kitve. O Lord of the universe, I do not desire material wealth, materialistic followers, a beautiful wife, or fruitive activities described in flowery language. All I want, life after life, is unmotivated devotional service to you. So if we study Dhruva's prayers, we see that our material ambitions are pretty tiny compared to Dhruva Maharaj. His lineage goes from his father Uttanapad to like Manu and then to Brahmaji. His ambition is to be greater than Brahma. Our ambition is, just to do simple stuff. But we spend many lifetimes, the idea is even Dhruva Maharaj, you understand, spent many lifetimes preparing ourselves to be the center of enjoyment. Now we turn to Krishna consciousness from our material suffering with the hope of coming to pure love of God. So in this purport, in this verse, Dhruva Maharaj has understood that issue in his life. He's realized that Krishna's lotus feet, he talks about that, worshiping Krishna's lotus feet is much more relishable than enjoying power that's beyond even Brahmaji. So he prays to Lord as protector of devotional path. That's what he's praying, to protect abiding in your devotional service. Like what? Like a cow protecting her calf. So what is that protection? to keep us within devotional service is to actually protect us from ourselves. Nobody externally keeps us from doing devotional service. It's actually protection from our own defective, problematic nature. That's the protection that Dhruva was talking about. So Srila Prabhupada says, Dhruva Maharaj was cognizant of the defective nature of his own devotional service. So even those fortunate souls, like we all are, come to Krishna conscious movement, hear about the message of bhakti. Doesn't mean we'll automatically become free from errors or mistakes. Because after all, from lifetimes of preparation, we're in ignorance, we're faulty beings, and it takes time to learn how to offer our service in pure manner. So Dhruva is describing Krishna as becoming active in our coming to that pure stage. We don't always value Krishna's participation because we think we're the doers. We think Krishna, is at the top of Guru Parampara line, so far away. And we start thinking Krishna maybe cares less for us than he does for those that have full Atma Nivedana. We think that Krishna is just remaining neutral, waiting for our purity to develop, at which time he will allow us, he will love us even more. And it is true, we're not pure, we have defects, that is true. But Dhruva Maharaj felt a regret deep in himself to see how material motivated he was. And the amazing thing here is that regret lasted even after he was actually, who was he speaking this to? To the Lord himself. That's pretty amazing that a devotee is feeling this kind of defect even when he's in front of the Lord. He's gotten to #1 position, gold medal, audience with Krishna, but he's feeling, gee, I have this problem. So neither of these issues which are actually true, that as aspiring devotees we're not pure, or I'm not pure, and understanding that that pure devotional service is actually uncompromising. But understanding that doesn't mean Krishna doesn't have a mercy towards a devotee before they come to that stage, as Srila Prabhupada talked about, ahoituki, unmotivated. Krishna is still extending himself. And the analogy that Prabhupada gives, how a cow gives calves milk and it also protects them. Even though he talks about protecting from attack, so what's to prevent the cow from getting attacked? Nothing. Because she's vulnerable too. But she's prepared to give her life to protect the calf. And the calf, as Srila Prabhupada points out, is dependent on the mother. And the mother's showing even more tender. So this way, back and forth, it's loving exchange. So we come to understand as we go on that what makes us so helpless, so dependent on Krishna, is not just our weakness, our smallness in the material world, but actually we're asking Krishna to protect our desires that are misleading us within our heart. Like the mother calf knows the baby calf is at risk not just from the lion, but from actually the influence of the child, the baby calf's own nature. But so Krishna knows that it's our nature that we need protection from, but he's not. Why doesn't he do something? Because he can't interfere with the free will. It's like in Srimad Bhagavatam, Mrita Gopakumar, a senior devotee, talking about this pastime, is standing there in Golok Vrindavan, and he looks off into the distance, and he sees a dust cloud coming towards him. And then music and a sense of happiness, and then he sees Krishna, and Krishna's body is covered with dust. And they finally meet each other and embrace each other. And Krishna says, I'm happy that you've come back because I've been waiting for this for so long. So why did Krishna just simply pull Gopakumar out from his journey, his material world presence? Because we have free will. And Krishna cannot take that. That's one thing that the Lord is not allowed to take. So Krishna provides, just like a father provides for a child, a nice atmosphere. And he's waiting for us to be sincere and move forward more. And Krishna says that he provides intelligence by which we can return to him. And he's the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So Krishna is saying all this. So real protection is protection from our true nature. That's protection. Do you have time to listen to a bhajan, 2 bhajans by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? I know you all have chores. Do you want me to play them there and I can show the screen? Or is it, we're well past the time and I don't want to waste people's time, but what do you think? I'm happy to do as you all see fit. Let me know so you can turn on your mics and say yes or no. And if you say no, that's fine. It's not negative.
I have time.
Yes, Prabhuji.
You have time? Let me
Yes,
see.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. So, let's see. Why is KK songs not coming up? Does anybody know what that website is off the top of their head?
We can just type kksongs.com on the top.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'll just, last time when I tried to do that, it didn't pop up like I wanted it to. So I'll just, I think it probably was, I was using wireless.
So maybe we can, what you can do one thing, you can stop sharing and reshare again. So when you share again, on the bottom left, you will see a option called like share computer sound.
Okay.
When you take that, when you click it, when you check that box, we can actually hear if you play on your computer.
So I'm going to do stop share, correct?
Yes. And share again, Prabhu. Doing that sharing, it will show a lot of screens, right? To share which window, and that white thingy in the bottom left, you will see share computer sound.
Ah, fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So it's asking, it's asking restart your audio sharing application. That doesn't sound good, right?
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Well, I think it's a protection.
Yeah,
thing.
now we can see the screen now.
Okay, let me just, so I've got this and I'll play the sound. I'll play the song. Just tell me whether you can hear it.
Sure, Prabhuji.
You see that screen or no?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so let's.
তুমি সর্বেশ্বরে
Yes, we can hear, Prabhu.
এশ্বরা ব্রজেন্দ্র কুমার তুমি সর্বেশ্বরে এশ্বরা ব্রজেন্দ্র কুমার তোমার ইচ্ছায় বিশ্বে সৃজন সংহার তোমার ইচ্ছায় বিশ্বে সৃজন সংহার তব ইচ্ছা মত ব্রহ্মা করেন সৃজন তব ইচ্ছা মত ব্রহ্মা করেন সৃজন তব ইচ্ছা মত বিষ্ণু করেন পালন তব ইচ্ছা মত বিষ্ণু করেন পালন তব ইচ্ছা মত শিব করেন সংহার তব ইচ্ছা মত শিব করেন সংহার তব ইচ্ছা মতে মায়া সিজে কারাগার তব ইচ্ছা মতে মায়া সিজে কারাগার তব ইচ্ছা মতে জীবে জনম মরণ তব ইচ্ছা মতে জীবে জনম মরণ সমৃদ্ধি নিপাত দুঃখ সুখ সংগঠন সমৃদ্ধি নিপাত দুঃখ সুখ সংগঠন মিছে মায়ায় বদ্ধ জীব আশেপাশে ফিরে মিছে মায়া বদ্ধ জীব আশেপাশে ফিরে তব ইচ্ছা বিনা কিছু করিতে না পারে তব ইচ্ছা বিনা কিছু করিতে না পারে তুমি তো রক্ষক আর পালক আমার তুমি তো রক্ষক আর পালক আমার তোমার চরণ বিনা আশা নাহি তোমার চরণ বিনা আশা নাহি নিজ বল চেষ্টা প্রতি ভরসা ছাড়িয়া নিজ বল চেষ্টা ছাড়ি ভরসা ছাড়িয়া তোমার ইচ্ছায় আছি নির্ভর করিয়া তোমার ইচ্ছায় আছি নির্ভর করিয়া ভক্তি বিনোদয়তি বিনয়ঙ্কিম ভক্তি বিনোদয়তি বিনয়ঙ্কিম তোমার ইচ্ছায় তার জীবন মরণ তোমার ইচ্ছায় তার জীবন মরণ তোমার ইচ্ছায় তার জীবন মরণ তোমার ইচ্ছায় জীবন মরণ
Were you able to hear that?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah.
The translation is really wonderful. So this is the section talking about how the Lord maintains. O youthful son of the king of Braj, you are Lord of all lords. According to your will, creation and destruction take place in this universe. According to your will, Lord Brahma creates, and according to your will, Lord Vishnu maintains. According to your will, Lord Shiva destroys. According to your will, Maya constructs the prison house of this world. According to your will, the living beings take birth. According to your will, they meet with prosperity, happiness, and sorrow. Tiny soul, bound up by Maya, vainly struggles in the fetters of worldly desires. Without your sanction, he is unable to do anything. You are my protector and maintainer. Except for your lotus feet, there is no hope for me. This is this Tuhiyo Rakshaka Palak Mera. No longer confident of my own strength and endeavor, I become solely dependent on your will. Bhakti Vinod is most poor, and his pride has been leveled. Now, in accordance with your will, he lives and he dies. So, this is on the Goptriptve Varana, right? We talked about that here. Goptriptve Varanam Tatha. So this section, the Lord as one's maintainer. And here's something very sweet about Lord as our protector. Try to get that to that. Those of you that haven't read the Sharanagati prayers, I highly recommend them. They're delving into the heart of a devotee. This one. Atma Samparna Gela Binam.
আত্মসমর্পণে গেলায় অভিমান
আত্মসমর্পণে গেলায় অভিমান
নাই করব নিজ রক্ষা বিধান
নাই করব নিজ রক্ষা বিধান
তুয়া ধন জানি তুয় রাখবি না
ধন জানি তুহু রাখবি না
ভালো ধন জানি করি তু আশা
ভালো ধন জানি করি তু আশা
চরা বিমাধব যমুনা তীরে
চরাবি মাধব যমুনা তীরে
বংশী বাজাও তো ডাকবি ধীরে
বংশী বাজাও তো ডাকবি ধীরে
ভগবগ মারত রক্ষা বিধান
ভগবগ মারত রক্ষা বিধান
কর বিসদা তু গোকুল কান
কর বিসদা তু
রক্ষা কর বিতু নিশ্চয় জানি
রক্ষা করবি তুহু নিশ্চয় জানি
পান করব হম যেমন পানি
পান করব হাম যামুন পানি
কালি ও দুঃখ করিবি বিনাশা
কলিয় দুঃখ করিবি নিশাসা
বিনোদী জল বারবি আশা
শুধু বিনোদী জল বাড়াবি আশা
প্রিয়ত দাবানল রাখো বিময়
প্রিয়ত দাবানল রাখো বিময়
গোপাল গোবিন্দ নাম তব
গোপাল গোবিন্দ নাম তব
সুরপতি দুর্মতি নাশ বিচারি
সুরপতি দুর্মতি নাশ বিচারি
রাখিবে বর্ষণে গিরিবর ধারি
রাখিবে বর্ষণে গিরিবরধারী
চতুর নান করব যাব চুরি
চতুরানন করব যাব চুরি
রক্ষা করবি ময়ে গোকুল হরি
রক্ষা করবি মোয়ে গোকুল হরি
ভক্তি বিনোদ তুয়া গোকুল ধন
ভগবতী বিনোদ দুয়াকুল ধন
রাখবি কেশব কর যত
রাখবি কেশব করত যতন
বিনোদ তুয়া গোকুল ধন
ভগবতী বিনোদ দুয়াকুল ধন
কেশব কর যত
রাখবি কেশব করত যতন
Were you able to listen to that one also?
Yes, Prabhuji.
It's just so sweet listening to the simple Bengali devotees, chanting these prayers, I mean, you can get a very sense of the mood in which Srila Bhaktivinoda like sang. So this is on protection. Surrendering to you lifted from me the burden of false pride. No longer will I try to secure my own well-being. Oh Lord, I'm confident of your protection, for like one of your cows or calves, I'm your treasured property. Right? What Srila Prabhupada talked about right here. Just like a cow who takes care of the calf. Oh Madhav, I see you leading your herds to pasture on the banks of Yamuna. You call to them by gently playing your flute. The imagery here is just so beautiful and so wonderful. By slaying giant demons such as Aga and Baka, you will always provide full protection, O Gokulakana. Fearless and confident of your protection, I will drink the waters of the Yamuna. The Kaliya serpent venom poisoned the Yamuna's waters, yet that poison will not act. You will purify the Yamuna, and by such heroic deeds, enhance our faith. Krishna can remove Kaliya's poison and negate it just by his will. And likewise, he can also negate our desires that are turning us away. You who are called Govinda and Gopal will surely protect me by swallowing the forest fire of material existence. When Indra, king of gods, sends torrents of rain, you will counteract his malice and protect us by lifting the mighty Govardhan hill. When the four-headed Brahma steals your cowherd boys, friends, and calves, then too you will surely protect me, O Gokula Hari. Bhakti Vinod is now the property of Gokul, your holy abode, O Keshav. Kindly protect him with care. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. So we read this verse today. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. After leaving us today, although we are completely dependent on your mercy, have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I'm sorry to take up so much of your time. It's 9:23. I'm sorry for being disrespectful of your important morning routine and processes. Any questions, comments, reflections, additions? There's a lot to be said in this verse, I think. So I'm sure there are things that some of you may have you want to discuss or questions. Reflections. So yeah. So I think this is a very nice verse. And we can understand that Krishna's true protection comes in helping us with our inherent nature, helping weaknesses in our heart. That's Krishna's protection. Because Krishna is protecting our relationship with him, which is actually the only quality for soul. Soul has no other quality. And so Krishna is nurturing that connection. And Kunkuti is asking for that nourishment. So Krishna is always orchestrating the lives of his sincere devotees so they can become dependent and attached to him. Because he knows what is good for us. And he provides just that. Okay, so with that, if there's no comments.
I just wanted to say thank you, Prabhuji, for the wonderful journey through the protection. It was very nice. You integrated so many different aspects of Lord's protection. It was very wonderful.
Yes, it tells me how far away I am from, deserving such protection, but still somehow they're getting it, even though having no qualification. So yes, the prayers of the Charyas are wonderful, and Srila Prabhupada's purport to this is truly brilliant, as always. Okay, so thank you all, and then today